Hey everybody, welcome to our early comic preview show. I'm Andy.
I'm Matt.
We're here with Infinity Flux Comics out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and this is our bigger show where we're going over about 20 books, their variants, all that fun stuff, telling you what you'll want to get when you go into your store, what to pick up, a little bit extra knowledge about those books on the shelf, and knowledge is power. So,
Knowing is half the
and
battle.
knowing is half the battle, and you have the power,
Right.
like he. Okay, so it's a pretty decent sized week with some pretty big, hard hitting books. So let's get into it. I'm gonna start off with our issue number 1 of Night Terrors. So we did have the Night Terrors First Blood. That was our kickoff issue, kind of an issue 1 also.
Yeah.
Um,
Prelude, I guess.
prelude
Yeah.
issue, but this is the official beginning of the story. Matt actually read this one too, which is cool because I feel like this does require us kind of
Right.
both knowing it to read some of the offshoot books. But in this one, we are learning a little bit more about insomnia as Deadman is in Batman's sleeping body, basically.
Right.
Yeah. And so Deadman has to be in somebody to control them. He's going up against insomnia. You also have a little bit more about what is Insomnia's plan. We know he's looking for the Nightmare Stone.
hmm
We learned a little bit more about what is that. Um, I like how this doesn't give us all the answers right
Right.
off. It's definitely like, okay, we know our characters, but we don't know necessarily motivations, or we know insomnia, but we don't know who is he really
Yeah.
type thing. And that you're gonna find a lot of that in this. But Deadman's got to figure out kind of all this information, even by at one point going into Insomnia's body and getting a little hints at his story, um, to stop him from whatever his master plan is. And this does have I won't give away what it is, but he does something really cool. He needs some help with this, with someone else who knows a lot about sleeping.
Oh, yeah.
And
I know what you're
I
talking
love
about.
that part. And
Yep.
now I can't wait to read the next issue.
Yes.
So, just a ton of fun. I thought this was Night Terrors has been a. I don't want to say I wasn't expecting anything big out of it, or I wasn't expecting it to be good, but it's still been pleasantly surprising.
Absolutely.
Every book I read, I'm like, that was like a really compelling, fun story.
If you are a Deadman fan, you will love this because
Yeah,
it's all Deadman. I mean, you see visually Batman, but it's Deadman. You hear his inner monologue, you see his mannerisms. It's all Deadman,
yeah.
like the whole thing, versus Insomnia, which is just really cool.
Yeah, yeah. And I love Deadman. He doesn't get enough
Definitely.
play.
Yeah.
So definitely recommend picking up this one if you've read any of the Night Terrors books. I think people were a little hesitant at first picking up one here or there or a character they like, but I had someone who walked over and he was grabbing each off the wall and he was like, I read one of them, but now I got to read them all.
There you
Type
go.
thing. So
That's it.
that's the thing. You just need a taste and you're gonna be
They're like Lay's potato chips. You can't just have one.
yeah. So that is Night Terrors number 1 of the 4-part miniseries.
Right. This is definitely the main story. So if you're gonna get any of them, it probably should be this one because this is where the main the events of the main story are happening in this
Yes.
one.
So we've got some awesome variants. We have our kind of black light variant. We've got our Alex Maleev variant. This gives you a good idea of is it Batman or is it Deadman? We've got this Matina variant that's really cool with Deadman. We also have some incentives. We have this 1 in 25 Doc Shaner variant.
I like that.
They were selling for $20. It kind of looks like a World's Finest cover.
Yep.
And we also have a 1 in 50 Maleev black and white variant that we're selling for $30.
All right. So next from Marvel is Fallen Friend: The Death of Miss Marvel. So Miss Marvel unfortunately passed away back in Amazing Spider-Man number 26. That was a couple of months ago, 2 or 3 months ago. And now this issue is all about how does the rest of the Marvel universe, how do they react to that? How do they handle it?
Mhm.
This book is broken up into three different chapters, each one done by a different creative team. The first one is by G. Willow Wilson with art by Takeshi Miyazawa, and this one shows Kamala's friends and family. So, because I mean, a lot of the discussion at the time was where's her family,
Yeah.
so we do see her family, we do see her friends come in to the mosque to mourn her passing. We also see Wolverine, Logan, and Carol Danvers comes in as well, just to pay their respects and to mourn her. Chapter 2 is from Mark Waid and Humberto Ramos, who did the 2016 Champions run, or the first 20 issues or so, which I just finished reading that part of it just recently. So it was kind of nice having just read that and then now reading this. And like we thought a while back, their chapter of this is focused on the champions. You've got Amadeus Cho and Viv Vision, Sam Alexander, Miles Morales is in there. And so they're all at the mosque as well, sort of just grieving her. And but what they're doing is kind of uh, like thinking back to her time, their time with her in the Champions, some of her really great moments, her inspirational moments, and then the story kind of turns to Viv a little bit because she's able to literally turn off her emotions, like literally flip a switch, and she's emotionless. And she's that way when they first get there. Amadeus Cho recommends that she turn her emotion switch on, which she does, and then she gets very emotional to the point where she has to run away and flip her emotions back off because it's just so traumatizing for her. And then chapter 3 is from Saladin Ahmed with art by Andrea DeVito. And this is when all the other heroes come in. You got most of the other Avengers. You got Captain America. Doctor Strange comes in. There's an interesting conversation between Iron Man and Doctor Strange about can she be revived? And Doctor Strange actually says, actually, I probably could, but it's not. It's never a good idea to do that. And then Peter Parker shows up near the end and introduces him to her parents, which we've never seen before. So just a really interesting look at how all the different heroes, plus her friends and family, are reacting to her passing. You see it all in this. So we've got a couple covers here. We've got our main A cover there, and then we've got our Carmen Carnero, kind of an homage variant there. And then we also have the Adrian Alfona variant.
Okay, and next up for me, we have Gargoyles Dark Ages. So this is a new Gargoyle series. We got the main ongoing that kind of continues the story of the original series of Gargoyles. This one is set back in the year 971 in Scotland, and it kind of explores the time frame where the Gargoyles and humans more or less coexisted
Nice.
happily. They definitely are. The humans are very fearful of them, and they are very kind of dismissive of humans. But in this, we actually see, which they don't actually have names yet, the gargoyles, because they don't get their names till they are in New York City. But who is the gargoyle that's Hudson later, kind of the older gargoyle, is kind of a young leader in this of the Waverin clan, and some humans approach them and basically say, "Hey, we're the rightful rulers of this place, but I think he says his brother or his uncle or whatever has like usurped the throne, and we're seeking your help to get it." And so it comes to a choice: are the gargoyles going to help the humans because they're basically like, "Why do we care?" Who leads this or whatever, and they're like, well, because it eventually is going to come back
Yeah.
to you. So this is a big thing about, do they trust the humans? Do they fight with them? What do the humans offer them in return? It feels like a lot of setup for like what we know of the gargoyles later. You also get a lot of the ones like Goliath and Hudson and Brooklyn and all of them, but they're like younger, like teen gargoyles, which is really cool to see. And they're like not allowed to, like, you can't get in harm's way because you're the younger
Oh
generation.
yeah.
You have to guard the eggs, all that kind of thing. Just a really cool new look at the gargoyles. This is written by the original creator of Gargoyles, Greg Weisman, who's also writing the other one. I love the art in this by Drew Moss. It feels kind of the kind of art style I want with a Gargoyles book. It feels a little bit more comic book like serious. kind of takes the Gargoyles to a new level. Very cool. The other big thing about this is, so this is kind of a premium issue because it's got a nice cover stock on it, thicker cover stock, and the back of the book has about a 3 or 4 page prose story written by Greg Weisman about this era of the Gargoyles and kind of a tale about them and everything kind of written in that time period and stuff. So very cool. It's kind of on the like parchment paper looking
Oh,
stuff.
nice.
Very, very cool. So if you're a Gargoyles fan, and I would say even if you're reading the main one and you like it, great, pick this up. If you read and you're like, I don't know if this takes for me, try this one out because I feel like it's different enough that this could be the Gargoyles book you're looking for. So
Nice.
very, very fun one there. Gargoyles Dark Ages. We also have some variants for this. We have the Qua variant. And Goliath's in this, but I don't know if he has more than a line or so that he says. It's mostly the older gargoyles. It's very cool to see. And there's a lot of them you've never seen before. And then we also have this one. This is by Parker. It's the action figure
I like
variant.
that one. I love the action figure variants of anything.
They're really cool.
Yeah.
And then we also have this 1 in 10 Jay Lee variant that we are selling for $8.
Nice. So next is another Night Terrors book. This is Night Terrors The Flash, the first of his 2-issue miniseries. This is from Alex Packnadel with art by Daniel Bayliss. And I'll say real quick too, the art in this is really good. I like the art in this a lot. But this book, if you didn't know anything about Night Terrors and you read this, you would think it was just a normal book because there's nothing about Barry being in his nightmare realm at all. But there's a very few small things that are just a little bit off. So the book starts out, Barry gets news that Wally has been injured in a fight with Grodd. So he rushes, zooms over to the hospital, and as soon as he gets there, Iris is there, and he says, "Is Linda here?" And she says, "Who's Linda?"
Mm.
But that's it, and then like he doesn't say anything like, "Well, what do you mean?" Like that's it. That's all that's said about it, and then he just continues on trying to figure out what happened. Um, he goes in to see Wally, and Wally tells him that there's something like burrowed into the Speed Force. Like there's something weird in the Speed Force, and that it's all wrong. Um, Wally is also one of the other little things that's wrong is Wally is laying in the hospital bed in his Kid Flash costume, like the yellow with
Oh,
the red. But Barry, it doesn't say anything like, "Hey, why is it like?" It's just like these weird little things.
dream logic type
Yeah, yeah,
thing.
like that he doesn't. So like I said, if you were reading this and didn't know it was a Night Terrors book, you'd be reading it like it's normal, but there would be a couple little things that would make you think, wait a minute, that's not right. So Barry then goes to get the cosmic treadmill because he wants to go back just a little bit to that battle, and he has to go up to the Watchtower, and Hal Jordan is there. But there's a little something off with Hal Jordan too, and we as the readers see it right off the bat, but Barry doesn't acknowledge it whatsoever. So Hal helps him, uses his ring to kind of, construct a new cosmic treadmill, repair the one that's there. Barry goes back to the fight with Grodd, but the Speed Force is like pulling him out of the past, like pulling him back to where he should be in time. And then we see something, and at the very end, he says, "Oh, I see what Wally was talking about. That's wrong with the Speed Force, and that's we don't know yet. Like we didn't see that." But it was just really cool. Like it was a really interesting book because, like I said, it feels like a normal Flash book, but there's a few little things that are just off.
Hmm.
But nobody in the book acknowledges them. But we as the reader would be like, "Wait a minute, that's that, and that's not right, and that's not
Yeah.
right." So it was just really well done. It was a really interesting way to handle um, a Night Terrors book because some of the other ones we've seen the heroes fall
Yeah.
asleep or whatever, but this isn't anything like that at all. So it was a really nice little bit of a change. So there's our A cover right there. We have a couple others as well. This one is from Daniel Bayliss. So this is the guy who did the interior art. That's the suit without the man.
It's cool.
Then we've got our Taryn Clark variant. And then we have our 1 in 25 Kyle Hotz variant that we're selling for $15.
What I feel like after reading a couple of the Night Terrors books is they really let the writers, they're like, okay, here's the premise of the characters fall
Yeah.
asleep and this happens, but you can kind of do with that what you want. How
Yeah.
much of that do you want to show? Do the characters know they're asleep? Everything is everybody gets to do their thing a little bit different,
Yeah,
and it feels fresh that way.
absolutely. Yeah, there's so many of these little 2 issue miniseries, but they do feel different, which is
Yeah, it
great.
doesn't feel like you're reading the same scene over and over. Like,
Right.
oh, there they go falling asleep.
Yeah.
Oh, there's
No.
this.
Yeah. There's a lot of differences.
Yeah. So next up, I've got a new X-Men book, X-Men: Days of Future Past, Doomsday. So this, of course, Days of Future Past, classic 2-issue storyline
Hmm.
of X-Men. This is a prequel to that. How did it get to this point? Days of Future Past is a kind of not post-apocalyptic, but for mutants it is
Yeah.
type thing. Most of the X-Men are dead or captured. It's all about the Sentinels are patrolling the streets, all of that. Well, this shows how did we get to that place in this timeline because it's kind of an alternate time. It's one of the I feel like one of Marvel's like first universe hopping
Yeah.
stories with the X-Men. But in this one, we see this is by Mark Guggenheim and the artist by Manuel Garcia, and we see kind of the right before the main story takes place, and then flashback to basically like the where you see everything. You're like, it all looks fine here. All the characters in their correct costumes, all of that. Now, there's some big stuff in this that we learn right at the beginning, and it's not really a spoiler because this is a alternate timeline, so there's new characters and stuff. We do have the son and daughter of Kitty Pryde and Colossus.
Nice.
And their code names are Sprite, which fits,
Mhm.
and Goliath. So find out more about them in this, what their powers are, everything. You do find that out. But this is not a very safe world, so you'll have to also read what's going to go on there. But it's cool when you jump back, you just see the slow trickle of what has happened, what characters are kind of the instigators of this events happening. It does involve Magneto. It involves even when they start to make mutants like being a mutant is outlawed. They talk about like the Avengers oppose it, but when they can't do anything about it, the all the Avengers just basically resign. They're like, okay, then we're not working for you if you're
Yeah.
not allowing these people. And that leaves the door open for a new Defenders team to come in, but made up of not as nice people as the Defenders So it's not only the X-Men that kind of have a change story, but the entire Marvel universe has to change to make the story take place. Spider-Man's in it, which in a very scary scene for
Okay.
Spider-Man and stuff. So overall, very interesting. Now, this is a pretty dark, depressing book, but you know where it leads to. It's a happy ending to the story in general, but you are seeing kind of the crushing of the mutants. So if you love that classic story, you want to read some more, want to see how that happened, with some new characters. There's some new costumes in this because what happens, some characters kind of change around a little bit. That is X-Men Days of Future Past Doomsday. We also got some variants for it. So we've got a Rob Liefeld variant, homaging
Yeah.
the classic cover. Just added a couple more characters on there. We also have this really fun Saturday morning variants by Sean Cheeks Galloway.
That I feel like that cover just does not fit the tone
No,
of the
not
book
at
though.
all. Not at all. This story would be very different if all the characters was in this art style. And then we also have a Hellfire Gala variant with Kitty.
All right. So next, sticking with Marvel, right, yeah, we've got Moon Knight number 25, and this is a. Let me just show you if you can see it. Like that's a big old thick book. Like that's a big square bound book. This is a definitely it's a 9.99 book, so it's definitely oversized. This is written by Jed McKay, who's been just killing it on this series. But it's done by several different artists, like 3 or 4 different artists that take on the book. This is the first appearance of Layla El Fayoli, who we saw in the Moon Knight TV series on Disney Plus. She was new for the show, and now she's in the book. She will become the third Scarlet Scarab. Um, this is this is all about Moon Knight going up against the third Black Spectre. So we learned that the Black Spectre, he runs this place called the Chapel Perilous, which is kind of like Moon Knight's Midnight Mission, where people can come into the Chapel Perilous and ask the Black Spectre for a favor. He says okay, but he actually says it'll cost you your soul. I don't know if he like literally means like he's gonna take your soul, but you're gonna owe him a favor, and he's not a nice guy, right? But if you need a not good thing done, he'll do that for you too. So Eight Ball, the character Eight Ball, we I think didn't we see him in She-Hulk just recently too, like a couple months ago? And he was
Yeah.
like he needed a
His head's
lawyer.
just an 8 ball,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So he goes to Moon Knight and says, Moon Knight, I need your help from the Black Spectre because he's after me now because I went to him originally. So Moon Knight, he takes Moon Knight to the Chapel Perilous, but it turns out it's a frame job. Like he tricks him. He's that was his way of getting him there. And then once he's there in the Chapel Perilous, Moon Knight has to go up against a couple of Black Spectre's goons. One, I love the names. There's Manslaughter Marsdale and there's Man Mountain Marco versus Moon Knight, right? So, at least I don't know Manslaughter Marsdale, but Man Mountain Marco has been around for since the 70s. So he had to fight them in this new place. So while all this is going on, we see a flashback.
There you go. There he is.
Yeah, nice.
That's good timing.
That's just in. Um,
Cool.
so while all this is going on, it intersperses back and forth to 12 years ago when Mark was part of this group called the Karnak Cowboys, and they were like this four-person mercenary group that would be hired. They're like a Black Ops team. They would be hired to come in and do like these dirty jobs, and they were hired to kidnap a rogue scientist who was experimenting with mind control. And that experimentation, that technology, is actually what Black Spectre is using today. So it all kind of ties together. We and that's where we first see Layla El Fayoly. She was part of that group, so she's known him for at least 12 years, if not longer. She was part of that group. So it's just really cool to. It's like I said, it's an oversized book. It's a good meaty story, and there's a lot of meat on the bone of the story that takes place in the past, as well as the current story as well. Just still very moody artwork that we've been accustomed to in this book. So it's really fun. If you've been reading Moon Knight, uh, you're definitely going to want to pick this up. And this is going to lead into the miniseries with Scarlet Scare. I think
The City of the Dead.
City of the Dead. Yeah. So this is going to lead into that. So yeah, definitely a really cool book that was nice to have. Just a nice big full Moon Knight story. So there's our 8 cover there, and we have a bunch of variants as well.
What's it's an issue 25, so
That's right.
you know it has to be. It's one of those landmark issues.
That's right. So we've got this John Tyler Christopher negative space variant featuring a Werewolf by Night. That's really cool.
Does he appear in that at all?
No.
Okay.
No, unfortunately not. We've got our Frank Miller variant. We've got the Jim Chung variant. When looking over at the city. Here's a really nice Gary Frank variant. I like that's the more classic Moon Knight costume.
Yeah.
That's the one I like. We have our Hellfire Gala done by Scott Forbes. Moon Knight able to take time out of his schedule to attend the Hellfire Gala. Here is the Art Germ variant.
Very cool.
And then we've got a 1 in 25 Mana Wolf variant. We're selling for $25. And then we have a 1 in 50 Virgin Gary Frank cover. So it's really good. I like that. That would be a great poster.
Yeah. Well, on to a DC book that is not Night Terrors related.
What?
We have World's Finest Teen Titans. So, World's Finest Teen Titans, much in the style of World's Finest Batman and Superman.
Best book on the stands.
It's hard to say, like, it's got that 70s feel.
Yeah.
But, like, with the, with modern art and modern writing and modern storytelling, but the same kind of, not even fun tone, but, lighter tone, that kind of feel. Because this is your classic Teen Titans team. This is pre-George Perez Teen Titans.
This is OG Teen Titans.
Yeah, with Bumblebee added. I'm not
Yeah.
sure at what point Bumblebee joined the Teen Titans.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's your classic team. So you've got Wally West, you got Roy Harper, You've got Karen, who is Bumblebee. You've got Donna Troy, Garth, who's Aqualad, and Dick Grayson. Now, I say Dick Grayson, but every one of the Teen Titans knows each other's names except Dick Grayson. They don't know who Robin is. So this is that time frame.
Okay.
And this is kind of a sore spot for Roy Harper that you'll have to read to see how that is, but it's kind of a trust issue. What's really fun about this is you see kind of each of the characters with their mentor. So you've got Donna Troy with Wonder Woman, you have Wally with Barry, you have Garth with Aquaman, and you kind of got each panel. You see kind of it almost even continues a sentence as you go, as they're all discussing with their mentors about like joining this team, and the mentors kind of being like, okay, well, this here's how you need to conduct yourself. Here's you need to be safe doing this. Just make sure all this stuff. But every time you get to Robin and Batman, Batman's like, nope, you don't need to be doing this. I don't like it. I don't trust any of them. And even at one point says like, yeah, Wonder Woman and Superman and Flash are all my friends, but I don't know these kids type thing. Yeah, it feels like the parent who's like, I'm not till I meet their
Yeah,
parents
right.
type thing.
He's a big old sourpuss.
Yeah. But this is kind of so it's fun because you got this classic feeling Teen Titans, but with like a more realistic story around their kind of personal lives. Um, you do have some fun adventures in here where they do go up against I don't think it's like a first appearance or anything, but it has to be a very classic Teen Titans character. Uh, it's like Dismemberment Man or something. I can't remember what it is, but like he's like this giant guy who can just like break off pieces of his body and attack you with them. But you see how all the Teen Titans work together. Uh, but all of that is uh, the modern side of this is it's all being filmed and Roy Harper is like putting it on social media.
Oh gosh.
And so he's really into this, and then Dick Grayson the whole time is like, you need to focus on the battle, what's going on. So the big tension in this is between those two. You also have Donna Troy, who is in a what is it called? The relationship when it's just convenient, or it's like you're just in a relationship with someone you work with, not
Oh
because
yeah.
you would like necessary like convenient ship or
Yeah.
something like that. So you do have a lot of dynamics within the team, but the real kind of meat comes from Roy against Dick. But also, what's their home lives like when they all have someone to go to, but Roy does not have Green Arrow there.
Mhm.
He's not quite a presence in his life. So just so much going on here. Written by Mark Waid, the artist by Emma Lupacchio. So much fun, and I feel like this is really going to expand these characters' relationships pre Titans, which I think is really really
Yeah.
cool. And kind of even maybe lead into some of the stuff that's going on in Titans with all of that. So highly recommend picking up World's Finest Teen Titans, especially if you want a little palate cleanser from all the Night Terrors books. We've got some fantastic variants for this, starting with, of course, you got to have a blank sketch cover. We've got a Doc Shaner character kind of spotlight cover. We have this fantastic. I don't even remember this one was up for order. And now I'm like, I hope I was
Yeah.
smart enough at the time to order this. This is a Jim Chung
That
variant.
is great.
But what makes it even better is if that cover was
Or foil.
shiny.
Yep.
So there's also the foil
And
cover
that has the checkerboard
as the
across the top,
checkerboard,
like
and I
DC did
believe the
in the
more
Silver Age.
classic. Yeah. So the one is kind of a virgin cover, like DC does with their variants, but the other one actually has the Titans logo on it. It's got the checkerboard at the top. It's got the names of the characters on the top, and the old DC logo in the corner. So that's tempting right there.
That's
And we also have this 1 in 25 Forbes variant. They were selling for $20.
yeah. I haven't read that one yet. I'm super excited. My love for World's Finest knows no bounds, and I'm super excited for that one as well. All right, so next we have a new book from Jeff Lemire called Fishflies. This is the first issue here. This one is a This was is an oversized too. This is definitely I want to say it's 40 pages maybe, or I think it's almost 50 pages. I'm not sure what the page count, but it's oversized for sure. This is about well, it starts off with these three boys who go into the convenience store to get popsicles, but when they go in, there's a robbery happening right then, and one of the boys startles the robber, and the robber shoots the boy, which is terrible, right? But something also happens to him. There's also this weird thing going on in the town with what's called fish flies, and actually there's like a 2 page um, statement by Jeff Lemire in the back just talking about where the idea for the book came from and how these insects called fish flies that come up off the water, like they were really prevalent where he grew up. So that's where the idea came from. So all over town, there's all these fish flies that are like just dropping down, dropping dead. So the robber of the store, he's injured. We don't really see how he gets injured, but he's injured down here in his gut. He runs away. He's really really badly hurt, but he manages to make it into this barn, this nearby barn. But that barn is owned by a young girl named Franny and her father seems to be one of those that's not really present in her life. Just tells her to go away or whatever. Um, so she actually goes out to the barn and she finds the robber. He's all wounded and everything. So she helps him get to a silo where he can sort of lay low and hide out. She says, "Nobody ever comes here. This is my secret hideout. You can stay here." She says, and she says, "I'm helping you because you need help." Like she's a pretty innocent girl. So she goes off to school, but the school sends all the kids home early because of the terrible incident that happened at the convenience store and one of the kids getting shot. So she comes back to find that these fish flies have the robber says that he thinks one of them is like nested inside him, and she comes back to find that he has changed. Now we don't it's not too much of a spoiler to say that because if you just look at the cover, you can get an idea of what that change is like. And then that's kind of where it is. So we don't really know like what the relationship is going to be between this young girl and this robber who shot a kid. But it should be interesting to find out. So just another really really mysterious book from Jeff Lemire that leaves you with a lot of questions. We only have a couple of covers here. We've got our A cover right there, and then we have a Teach Momoko variant featuring Franny covered by fish flies, which is pretty creepy.
Jeff Lemire has a way of doing atmosphere and like small town.
That's
That's
exactly what
kind
this
of
is. Yep.
his claim to fame. So I'm looking forward to reading that. Okay, next up, I've got a new indie book. This is called Hunger and the Dusk, or The Hunger and the Dusk. Uh, I always wanted to say Hunger Dusk, but this is by G. Willow Wilson, who was one of the original writers on Miss Marvel and stuff. So it's cool she's doing a original story. I know she's done a few like Air and everything for
Yeah.
Vertigo, but this is the new one.
She's doing Poison Ivy too right now.
Yes. So this is set in I would say, a high fantasy world, at least to the, not medieval fantasy, but like high fantasy with, I'm guessing there's elves. We don't see them, but there's definitely like humans or humans with pointy ears and orcs. The art in this is by Chris Wildgoose, which is really, really good. I really liked it. So in this world, um, it's the lands are kind of dying. It's hard to tell. Is it like a famine or is it something like that? But you have the human-like characters who they know how to work the land, and their land is doing a little bit better than more up north where the orcs live. Now, this is the classic the rivalry humans and orcs. Humans talk about orcs like, they eat their own babies
Oh
and they
yeah.
do all this stuff.
Classic human
Yeah,
orc.
this gave me a lot of like World of Warcraft vibes with like, but if you play on the Horde side, you go like, oh no, the orcs are cool, like they're real chill and stuff like that. So you've got some of that because this bounces back and forth between the two. So on the orc side, you see them being like, hey, our lands are really dying off, and we have to move south to better lands. Well, that's going to bring them in conflict with the humans. So there's tension there, but that's kind of forgot how many like months in the past. But the other thing that looks like it's going to happen is they're going to be approaching this as like we need to create a truce between the humans and the orcs, which is a very like timid situation because they all have their preconceived notions about what each is going to bring to the thing. Uh, but secretly, or not secretly, but like off to the side, there seems to be another entity, another species, another people or whatever that are very fast and very brutal, that are kind of like washing over the land, just annihilating people. And it looks like that it's really going to force the orcs and the humans to work together when they find out that this force is coming through. The other thing it gives a hint at, and I think if you see the cover for the next issue and some of that, that this is going to be a little bit of like a Romeo and Juliet story because there's some
Yeah.
younger characters that from each of the peoples that I believe are going to get together. I think the solicitation talked about that, but this first one is kind of setting up the two worlds and their views on each other and everything. I thought this was really cool. I love like just orcs. They ride like these big like kind of buffalo cow things. They've got all the cool armor. Just really cool world building in this one for sure. So if you like that kind of fantasy, but you definitely just the World of Warcraft thing of like the Horde and the Alliance and what their relationship
Yeah.
is and everything. A lot of that in here. So that's the Hunger and the Dusk. It's from IDW, and we have, I believe, one variant for it. This is the Cliff Chiang variant. I believe he's doing one that kind of looks like this for all of the
Yeah.
issues.
It's kind of nice too because there's not that many fantasy books.
Yeah,
There's a huge array of genres across comics, but there's not that many fantasy.
yeah, especially that kind of fantasy. I don't know the kind of almost like D&D type
Yeah.
fantasy I
Yeah.
really like.
So next is What If Dark Loki #1. So this is a new series. This is the first issue in this new line of What If books. Each series or each story is a one and done. So like this, there's not going to be a What If Loki #2 because the next one is the Gwen Stacy
Hmm.
that we talked about a while back. But this book, this is written by Walt Simonson, of Thor fame,
Yeah,
right, with
classic.
Scott Eaton on artwork. So this is really cool because this alters the events of Thor #153 that came out like back in the Silver Age. In that story, the actual story that like you could buy back then, Loki gains possession of Mjolnir from Thor, and of course that causes Thor to transform back into Donald Blake. That's when he couldn't be separated from his hammer for more than a minute. Um, he's able to lift and wield Mjolnir. Now in that story, Lady Sif, actually helps Thor slash Donald Blake get the hammer back, and happy ending and all that. In this one, Loki gets Mjolnir, it turns into a staff, and then he stabs Donald Blake with the staff and kills him. So
Wow.
and he keeps Mjolnir for himself. So he started, he obviously he's got one of the most powerful weapons in the universe. He goes kind of, he uses that power to stage an attack on Asgard. He pulls together, or he actually kills a couple of other notable gods and characters in Norse mythology as well. But then he rallies together a bunch of really powerful beings like Surtur, like Hela, like the giant wolf Fenris, Jormungand, the
Jormungandr?
Jormungand, yeah, the big like dragon.
Thanks God of War for pronunciation of all these
Yeah.
things.
So he pulls all of these beings together, and they launch a full-on assault on Asgard, and it's pretty epic. Like I said, this is a one and done story, but it's still a pretty big epic battle that you see, and they lay waste to Asgard. Um, and I won't say anything more than that, but how what happens after all that is really really interesting. I don't know, like it's really fun. Like what if books have always been really fun. I've always enjoyed them. I was wondering why it said dark. I was like, why not just call it what if? But I kind of get it after reading this
And
one.
also, we're kind of used to like the good guy Loki,
Yeah.
and I feel like this is more of the bad guy Loki.
This is super, and it's even done in the style of like, oh, like, cause there's like thought
Hmm.
bubbles, and yes, it's classic old school evil Loki with the green, with the scales and the big horns. Like it's classic Silver Age Loki.
Because if it's like the current Loki and stuff, you're like, if he got the hammer, you're like, he's not a great person, but he'd end up doing good.
Yeah,
In the old version, you're like, you don't want him to
yeah,
get
no,
that.
he's a bad guy in this one. Classic Loki. So really fun, a really strong first issue from this What If Dark series. So we have our A cover here by Walt Simonson himself, and then we have the Emma Lupacino variant as well.
She took a break from drawing World's Finest Teen
That's
Titans to do
right.
that cover. Okay, next up, I've got Star Wars Darth Vader number 36. This continues to be a super fun and really surprising series, going to places that Star Wars really hasn't gone to before. So in this one, Vader has just got this shield that's called I'm not sure how you say it, it's Zally, like Zally or Zayli
Zaylee?
shield, that helps him focus his force powers that are kind of gone berserk since the Fermata Cage and the previous storyline, everything. But most of this issue is actually spotlighted on droids, and I feel like this is definitely a big lead into the Dark Droid storyline
Oh.
coming because droids are rallying up, and you wonder like why are they all here, and you find out these are all droids that Vader has killed or chopped up and been rebuilt, and they now are gonna seek revenge on Vader. And it's really funny because there's like a little skinny battle droid, but he's got a super battle droid arm, and they're like, sometimes our repairs aren't great, and the guy's like, yeah, I understand that or whatever. It's really fun, but also very scary droids, and it feels like I'm now wondering what the Dark Droid story is going to be like because this definitely uh, it feels like, oh, they're all after Vader. So I'll be interested to see what they're all actually after in the Dark Droid storyline. So really fun issue. You've got the return of BD1 and all the sadistic droids and some familiar faces droids and everything. Just really fun. But of course, it's Vader. You know he's going to survive this, and you see why he survives
Yeah.
this because he is unstoppable. So just another fun issue of Darth Vader. I've got some variants for it. So this is the Vecchio variant, and I didn't know this is not necessarily connecting, but this one has Sabe with Padme's reflection on it, and there's one coming up that's Leia with Padme's reflection or something like that.
Nice.
So really cool one there. Then we have these fantastic, loving these Jerry Ordway
Yeah,
variants. And
those.
that one, this one looks like a straight up like with the yellow. The
Yep.
yellow looks so much like the old Boba Fett cover where he
Oh
it's
yeah.
just like this, but this time you got Sabe and Ochi on there with Vader.
Yeah, those are
So
great.
so good covers.
So next we got another Night Terrors book. This is Night Terrors Robin. Oh, were you?
No,
Yeah.
nope,
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
just switching.
Night Terrors Robin, the first of his two-issue miniseries. This is done by Kenny Porter is the writer. Miguel Mendoza is the artist. Really good art on this one too. So this book is centered around Tim and Jason. We see them like out in the real world. Tim's taking down some bad guys, and Jason's over here doing the same thing. But when they get sucked into their nightmare realm, for some reason they get sucked into the same one.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's
Really sleeping with their heads touching.
maybe because that happened too in the Poison Ivy book. There was a supporting character from the current Poison Ivy series who also wound up in Poison Ivy's nightmare realm. So there's been a couple books now where two characters have been put into one single nightmare realm, and I don't really know why because they're still able to communicate with each other in the nightmare realm, but they're still facing off against each other's their own worst nightmares. So Tim's worst moment that he has to deal with is the death of his father at the
Mm.
hands of Captain Boomerang. And he has to relive it over and over. It's one of those deals where like he witnesses it and he's like, I can save him this
Yeah.
time, and he tries something and it doesn't work, and then it gets reset. He's like, I can do better. And like I think it said he like after 50 tries or something, he's witnessed his father getting killed like 50 times from Captain Boomerang. And then, of course, we all know what Jason Todd's worst moment is. So he has to face off against a twisted version of the Joker. He tries to just shoot him, and there's all kinds of stuff that he tries to do too. And needless to say, like nothing that they do works. But it's just really cool to see Tim and Jason. I mean, they're separated throughout most of the book, but they still communicate with each other. Still, sort of, they're still a pairing. And we don't see too much of the two of them together. So just another really cool outing. Another just like I said, all these Night Terrors books they do feel a little bit different, and especially since all these characters have their own worst things that they have to
Yeah.
deal with. And Tim having to deal with his father like that was pretty rough. Like that was a pretty horrible thing to see. So we have our A cover here. We got a couple variants for this one as well. This one featuring Jason Todd is by James Stokoe. Batman looming in the background. This one is from Liam Sharp. This is a little bit more like what Jason is having to deal with. And then we have our Dustin Nguyen cover featuring Tim.
Well, I've got a Night Terrors book,
Ooh.
and it is one that I really, really like. This is Night Terrors Zatanna. So I already really like Zatanna as a character, and she does not get a whole lot of screen time, just in general. So one focusing on her is awesome. Now we talk about, some of these. I think Ravager had kind of a big deal to do with the overall plot and kind of what's going on with Night Terrors. This one does too because Zatanna is not asleep. We saw in
Right.
the First Blood. Is it First Blood or Last Blood?
First Blood.
First Blood.
Yeah.
Okay, we saw in that one that she actually managed to fend off the kind of falling asleep thing. But everyone around her, including Detective Chimp and Wonder Woman, fell asleep. Now she is all alone. She is up against the Sleepless Knights, which are
With a K, Sleepless Nights with a K.
Yeah. These are Insomnia's kind of
his army, yeah.
His knights type thing. They're very creepy looking, very dark and everything. But it's just her up against those. So what does she do? She thinks there has to be someone else who is also awake. Let me put out a call. And in her backwards spell, she's asked for a champion. But who shows up but Robot Man, who she doesn't even really know.
Yeah.
She knows he's a member of Doom Patrol, but she doesn't know it's Robot Man or Cliff or any of his names.
That's kind of refreshing though, because anytime two heroes team up, they always just know each other. And
Yeah.
I've always wondered, are there times like when they don't? Like,
Yeah, that they weren't at the same party.
yeah, they don't live in the
something.
same city or whatever.
And Zatanna is like, oh no, it's a Doom Patrol guy. They are a mess. Like,
They're the worst.
They're the worst. But she has a reason because there is actually a callback to when her father died around a seance table that a former member of the Doom Patrol was there too. And so she slightly blames them
Oh,
for.
okay.
So she has already a pretty negative view of the Doom Patrol. But what are you going to do? There is this big burly robot guy there, and she's like, okay, well, we're going to have to work together as much as I know you're going to screw this up. But I need you to get Detective Chip and Wonder Woman because I know that the Hall of Justice has a magic panic room that we can put them in to keep them safe. So this is those two adventure to find the magic panic room in the Hall of Justice. And of course, there's going to be mazes and traps and monsters all along the way to get there. So just a magic fun time with a pretty shocking ending to it as well, where you see truly what the Sleepless Knights are capable of doing. So, just, my own bias, I love Zatanna, but just pick this one up. It is written by Dennis Culver, who is your Doom Patrol writer.
Yep. And he's doing a great job on that book. Like, I love it.
And the art is by David Baldion, who I already really like. So just overall, very solid installment in Night Terrors that I think everyone should pick up. So that is our A cover. We've also got this super creepy but fantastic. This is a new one for me. This is Kunka is kind of the name they put in quotations, which gives me kind of deceased feel with the kind of a zombie Zatanna there. We also have our. This is the Sudium variant. We just saw him yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was at Fanboy. Sudium variant, very cool. And of course, we have the Destined Win variant. This one's really fun with her. I guess her holding her own hand.
Yeah, that's strange.
We also have a couple of incentives as well. We have the 1 in 25 Rossimo variant that we're selling for $25. And we have this 1 in 50 Sudium variant that we're selling for $65.
And another nice example of how all these different miniseries are different because they're not even asleep in this.
Yeah,
one. Like they're dealing with something different than a lot of the other heroes are. Super cool. So this one, speaking of Loki, as we did a few minutes ago, this one is Loki number 2, just continuing on his own new miniseries. This is written by Dan Waters with art by German Peralta. So at the end of the first issue, Loki's ship, the Nalgafar, 3 pieces broke off, and those 3 pieces went to 3 different realms.
What's the ship made of?
It's made of fingernails.
Okay, just in case anybody's stomach had settled since the first time around.
Yeah, and I was gonna say there is still there's only one mention of fingernails in this one. You don't actually see it, but there's still
You know they're there.
yeah, fingernails of dead, unloved Norse warriors, I think is what the ship is made out of. So
I don't care whose they are.
the finders of these pieces, they're able to shape these pieces to do whatever they want, and it gives them untold power. At the end of last issue, Loki went to Nidavellir to get the first piece and found that a dwarf named Samir Thatchbeard had crafted it into an axe. And it actually is very reminiscent. And this issue was kind of reminiscent of Barbaric because the axe has a little skull on the back side.
Yeah,
And a lot of the narration is the axe narrating.
that's fun.
But it's not quite the same as like how Barrick the axe actually
Yeah.
talks. But it still reminded me of that. So Loki gets captured by Samir's son, Eoten, another dwarf. And Loki then warns Eoten that, hey, there's other factions of dwarves coming after your father because he has this super powerful weapon. And he tells him this one faction is getting this mystical weapon from this thing. Another faction is getting another mystical weapon from this thing. So Eoten goes and tells his dad, hey, maybe we should let Loki go so he can help us. And Samir, the guy with the axe, he blows it all off. So Eoten steals Loki's crown and crafts a bow, like a bow and arrow. He crafts a bow to use to help his dad fight off these other factions of dwarves. And when he uses that weapon, something really like it was one of those where you turn the page and your eyes get big, like oh gosh, like something happened when he used that bow. So there's a big battle. I won't say anything more than that because that would reveal what happened. But at the end of the book, though, we don't know where the second piece is. Like Loki's going to go. That's his next mission is to go get the second piece. But at the end, we get a glimpse of where the third piece is. The third piece is on Midgard. We knew that from the first issue. But somebody found it and they take it. They try to do something with it. Somebody else sees it and it kind of drives them crazy too. So it's one of those like Pulp Fiction where they open a briefcase. It's just light, so we don't really see too much. But just really cool. Like this was like a really good issue. Like I want to know. It's fun to see Loki go on these little adventures. Like this could be a Disney Plus show. Like oh, he goes here to get this piece and has to deal with all these different things. So just a really really good fun issue of Loki dealing with dwarves on Nidavellir. So we have our A cover there, and then we have this Teo Loli variant as well, featuring Odin's Ravens, I think, or maybe I'm not sure.
Ravens in general.
Ravens in general.
Whoever they belong to.
There's somebody's Ravens.
Okay, next up, I've got some Amazing Spider-Man. He's pretty amazing. This is Amazing Spider-Man issue 29. So we're leading up to that big issue 31. Is it 31?
31 is the
wedding issue.
Size, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But we're still dealing with the Doc Ock story in this, where Doc Ock has discarded his old metal arms in lieu of some octoid bots that can break apart and they're kind of little gooey guys. But he's been going after Norman Osborn. And we find out in this, why has he been targeting Norman? What does he blame Norman for? Which is really interesting. But also, Peter, meanwhile, is learning about the other arms. He thinks that they can lead him to Doc Ock. So him and J. Jonah Jameson are working with these arms to figure out how can they possibly utilize them. Now, the interesting about this is there is some little hints in here to Peter's days as Superior Spider-Man, where Doc Ock was in his mind, it took him over and became Superior Spider-Man, because Peter feels like he understands these octopus arms and how to work on them and everything more than he should. He said it's more like remembering than learning how to do it. So we do know there's a Superior Spider-Man, a new series coming up later this year, and I feel like we're getting the first hints of that. So I thought this was a really fun issue. There's Spider-Man has a new look at the end of it. You know, they always love to shake up the look a little bit, but he definitely goes in a direction in this one that you'll have to see. But I thought this was a fun issue of Amazing Spider-Man, and this has been a pretty fun storyline with great art by Ed McGuinness. We also have some variants. So we have the Hellfire Gala variant, where Black Cat and Mary Jane got invited. I guess now you can call her Jackpot.
Jackpot, yes.
Uh,
Well, no, not yet. It's
not yet.
there yet.
And we also have the Disney special cover. No, this is not for Captain Marvel. It's for
Right.
Amazing Spider-Man, but with Minnie in the Captain Marvel place.
We got one more Night Terrors book. This is Night Terrors Shazam #1. This one is from Mark Waid with a really nice art by Roger Cruz. Like this was a really good looking book. So this features this is centered around Mary Marvel. And what's different again about this book is that she kind of experiences a nightmare inside a nightmare. So it's very like Inception-y almost. But in the nightmare, she runs into Billy, aka Shazam or Captain Marvel, but he's wearing all black. Like when he first showed up, I thought it was Black Adam, but it's actually Billy as Shazam, but in like black. It looks like he stole Black Adam's clothes and he's wearing them. So it's established that while she's in the nightmare, she doesn't quite know she's in the nightmare. And in the nightmare, she's having trouble sleeping. Her parents want her to go see a sleep specialist. So she does. But when she gets there, she finds out that it's all a trap from Billy, aka Shazam, looking like Black Adam. And he chains her up and he does something that's kind of disturbing. Like, I won't say what it is, but like and he does it more than once, and to see it happen I was like, whoa, they actually like that's not fun. That's unsettling a little bit. So she's 2 levels deep in a nightmare, right? So she has to kind of deal with that. So I don't know how she's gonna get out. That's how the issue ended, with this weird, disturbing thing that Captain or Shazam was doing. But we'll have to see, what she does in the next issue. So we've got our A cover right here, feature. I mean, that's kind of sort of what the book is like, that cover right there. And then we have a couple of variants for this one. We have our Hayden Sherman variant featuring Shazam, Captain Marvel. Mary Marvel is front and center on this cover from Helene Lenoble. We have our Dustin Nguyen variant right there. And I don't know if I showed this one, but this is the Dustin Nguyen Flash variant. I think I got these mixed up. So going back to Flash, that's what the Flash cover looks like.
And we're not completely out of Night
Terrors.
You have
one more.
Because I have Night Terrors Green Lantern. This one was awesome. So this one is written by your main Green Lantern writer, Jeremy Adams. And this kind of felt like a horror version of Green Lantern's greatest hits.
Okay.
So actually, in the last issue of Green Lantern, we saw him on a plane and people were falling asleep. Well, this is where this picks up. And as he wakes up in the plane, everyone's asleep, and he goes through the cabin door, and suddenly he's in a church. And this time he's a little kid because he is at the funeral of his father. But of course, this is a nightmare, so when his mom says we need to go up and say goodbye, his dad's creepy hand starts coming out of the coffin. So this is like I said, greatest hits. You've got his the funeral of his father. Then you have him stumbling upon Abin Sur, giving him the lantern or giving him the ring, but doesn't go the way you think, and it goes a much horror direction. As maybe Abin Sur is actually going to take something from him.
Oh, okay.
We also got stuff with later on, kind of at the point where this story starts, this run where he's stuck on Earth. But I thought all the Guardians were gone, so why is he talking to the Guardians? Just this constant, like, I open a door now, I'm in this kind of memory, but everything has a dark twist to it. Till the very end, I mean, one of his darkest things reveals itself. And I think this is Green Lantern such a cool character for this, because his whole thing is overcoming fear.
Yeah.
Like that's overcoming nightmares is like what his willpower is. And you learn why he was seeing all these things and then finally what might be the thing that gets him. So that's super cool. Plus there's a backup story where you find out what is Sinestro's nightmare.
Oh, okay.
Which you can kind of imagine it has to do with his own
Hmm.
hubris. So very cool in there. We've got some variants.
That A cover gives me DC, DC
Deceased,
vibes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we have this variant by Derek Robertson with Sinestro in the fetal position. We've got our Dustin Nguyen variant. We've got this Mike Diodato cover. And we have this super cool Pete Woods 1 in 25 variant we're selling for $20.
That's creepy. All right, so Miles Morales, Spider-Man #8, this nice, amazing Spider-Man 238 homage cover. That's really cool. The Carnage Reigns is over, so Miles is enjoying life. He's at a carnival with his girlfriend Tiana and a couple other their friends. But his spider sense is acting up, like alerting him to danger that's not really there. Like it's just on the fritz, like it's shorting out, right? Um, he talks to Tiana about it, and she says that maybe he needs to talk to someone else because he's been through a lot of trauma. Like he was really badly injured at the end of Carnage Reigns, like stabbed Iron Man. He would have died if Iron Man hadn't been there to save him. So he's been through a lot, and it's starting to affect him. So while they're at the carnival, Hobgoblin, but we don't know which one. I don't think it's Ned Leeds because he mentions Leeds, but like we don't quite know which Hobgoblin it is. He is breaking into an old Beyond lab, the Beyond Corporation,
Yeah.
a lab of theirs to steal their tech. It's been just kind of like shut down or whatever. He's trying to steal their tech, but the lab is near the carnival that Miles and Tiana and their friends are at. And his spider sense does go off again, but this time it's real. So he and Tiana go to investigate. And then they just get into a big flat out brawl with Hobgoblin in this lab. But they get separated, and during the fight, like the whole building gets brought down on him. And during the fight too, his like I said, his spider sense is on the fritz, so he's not being warned of all the danger that he's facing in this fight. So Hobgoblin might be able to get a leg up on him, especially now that he's a little bit wounded again because the building just fell on him. So just really cool to see Miles versus a Hobgoblin at some point.
There's been a
Um,
few of them recently.
yeah,
There's a new like third one that popped up.
yeah, and Hobgoblin does mention something about the Queen. I don't know if that's the Queen Goblin, that we've seen in Amazing Spider-Man. I'm not too sure, but we don't know quite who that is yet. But just still, Miles continues to be a great Spider-Man and a great
Great
book.
cover.
Yeah, that I love that cover. Like I said, that homage cover. We got a couple of variants as well. This is our nice Jim Chung variant, which I really like that one quite a bit. And then we have our Bernard Chang Hellfire variant, which that's a good way to relax and take your mind off trauma. Is go to the Hellfire Gala. Nothing bad ever
Walk
happens
on the
there.
ceiling.
Yeah.
Okay, next up I have Star Wars Bounty Hunters. This is issue 36. Vader and Bounty Hunters are about the same number. This just continues to really fun. That kind of not soft reboot, but the soft jumping on point the last issue was, where you have kind of the new team of bounty hunters working together. They went to get the help of Boba Fett in the last one because they think that he can help them find a way to save Valence, who has recently been through a lot where his memories got wiped out. So now his memories are very blurry. He doesn't quite remember everybody. But for bounty hunters, they really care about their friends, which is nice to see. But of course, Boba Fett will not help you unless you help him first. He's got a mission they have to go on that involves the Black Sun cartel and a whole lot of explosions and fighting. That is just really cool to see. It's a lot of like, you thought you knew what this plan was, but secretly I've known what this plan is all along, and y'all are just here helping me with this. Just really cool. It looks like Boba Fett may not be in the rest of the series. He was just kind of in for these two issues, but I'm very interested to see what is coming up next with the kind of hints they've been dropping in this one. So another great issue of Bounty Hunters. We've got some variants for this. We have this Salvador LaRocca with Death Stick. We've got the Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary cover. This one's really
I love those.
nice. And this one, which is another fantastic one, is the Jerry Ordway vintage style cover.
So next from Scout Comics is one called Death Comes for the Toymaker. This is the first issue, and this is written by Dakota Brown, who is local here to Chattanooga. And the art is by Ryan Cody. The cool thing about this, anybody who pre-ordered this with us, you are going to get this along with a free ash can edition of this book, which is super cool. So this takes place the day before a holiday called Iya's Day, and the best way to think about it is think about Christmas and think about the toy maker as Santa. That's not what is in this book, but that's the best way to get a good picture of it. So the toy maker and Death made a deal a long, like thousands of years ago that if in exchange for the toy maker getting eternal life, he would give Death one day off a year, and the toy maker would be the one to go claim the souls like Death normally does. And he does it at the same time as he delivers presents to children.
One for you.
Yeah.
Gonna take you.
Well, it's funny because when it's time for him to go out to deliver the presents, he puts on his coat and he's got 3 pockets. One says naughty, the naughty list, the nice list, and the death list in his jacket, which is really
Don't
cool.
get it mixed up.
Yeah, right. And then he flies away on this big giant winged boar. And he's got Death's scythe with him. So he goes into one place and he's delivering a present for a young kid, but then that young kid's father is on the death list, so he has to take he takes the soul of the father, but the kid sees him do it, and then he gets all distraught because he notices that that kid's name has gone from the nice list to the naughty list after he witnessed this. So he gets mad at Death and confronts him back at his place at what would be the North Pole. It's not really explained or not really stated that way. But and then they just get into a big fight, and during that fight, we actually see way back when to how they met and how they became friends, even though they're fighting. It turns out that they do this all the time, like every year. Like the toy maker says, "I don't want to do this," and Death says, "Well, you have to because you promised." And they fight, and then they kind of get over it and say, "Oh, there we go again." That's so. But then at the end, the toy maker is given some information about how maybe to get rid of Death once and for all, which he's pretty intrigued by. So it's just a really interesting take on the whole mythos of Santa and Christmas. He leaves the presents, but then he kills the guy or something like that, right? So just really cool to see his and Death's relationship. So just really nice, and again, done by a local writer, Dakota Brown. So just really cool to have that in store. It was a really, really interesting read.
Very cool. And lastly, for me, I read Incredible Hulk issue 181. Following up from the events of the last issue, a new character shows up. You might call that last one his first appearance. I probably would.
You should call that last one his
But
first
he
appearance.
shows up in this one. He is called the Wolverine.
That's weird.
That's weird. Weird name. Anyways, of course, I was thinking, how long can I hold this up
Right.
and remember what happens in this issue? No, there is a facsimile edition of Hulk 181 coming out. First appearance, or second appearance of Wolverine. Argue amongst yourselves in the comments about what is his first appearance. We all know what it is. 180. So awesome one here. If you've never read it, this is a much cheaper way of getting to read it than finding an original copy. But your original copy will not be as fancy as this one.
Because like we said earlier,
foil edition.
Everything looks better in foil.
Everything looks better in foil. Like immediately you're like, oh, I'm seeing this in a new light.
Yeah.
This is so cool. So there is a foil cover for Hulk 181 as well. Put it right next to your original copy and have people guess which is more expensive. They may say the shiny one.
That's right.
But no. So very cool in there. For this week. That wraps up this week, I believe.
Yep.
You got anything else?
I'm done.
Okay, well then. Well, thank you so much for watching. And don't forget, you can head over to infinityflux.net where you can pre-order these. You can order the comics that came out this week. You can pre-order ones coming up next week or future weeks. Everything you pre-order, you do get 10% off of. We're a local store. I know the names of every person that ships out these books and have we've been to parties and stuff.
Yeah.
So support your local store, but also if you don't have a local store, we can be your local store. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure to tune in to us when we do our Wednesday show, where we'll be talking about some of the upcoming comics you can pre-order. So we will see you then, and until then,
See you later.
goodbye.